Hey everybody, this is Jim from the Pain PT, and I'm happy here to have a success story today, which I love to bring to you guys, mind body success stories. I have Jane here from Canada. Jane, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. I was putting out an email to some people and saying who's a mind body success story, who's had success using these principles and approaches, and you willingly came on and wanted to share your story, which I think is great because it helps so many people who are struggling with these conditions and to spread the word. Like we just talked off air, there's not enough people who are doing this work and people believing in this work. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, and maybe you can start and just share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of go through your story of what happened to you, and then to where you got to now.
Perfect. Thanks. So my story goes back a long time. I'm 58 years old now, and at age 20, I was in a car accident. We were rear-ended by a tow truck, and that's when my journey started into the chronic pain abyss, I guess I'll call it. So at that point, I was treated by a physiotherapist. I had kind of developed low back pain from the car accident. And then I went on to become a dental hygienist shortly after that, which involves a lot of static positions, leaning over patients, holding the same positions. So I always kind of had a reason why I had back pain, started with the car accident and then kind of continued thinking I had chosen the wrong profession, that it was, hard physically on myself. Over the years, my pain moved. It started in my lower back, moved up to my mid back, my upper back, shoulders,
So it
neck,
started out, just
base
to
of the
highlight for
skull.
the listeners, started as a low back, and then it just migrated and expanded, which is a common thing we see.
That's right. And now I know that that's definitely a symptom of neuroplasticity, but I didn't know any of that back then. Also, now looking back, I had a whole host of other symptoms that I now know are neuroplastic, but chronic pain was always the predominant one. So that was the one that kind of took most of my attention at the time. So I couldn't sit for long periods of time. I couldn't stand still for long periods of time. Really, my most comfortable position was lying out flat on the floor. So that was where I, started to spend a lot of my life when I wasn't working. Um, Over the years, I had many different diagnoses, uh, whiplash. In my 20s, I had, was told I had degenerative disc disease. In my 30s, herniated discs. In my 40s, nerve impingement at C6, C7, because I started getting numbness and tingling in my hands and discoloration. My fingers would turn purple. Repetitive strain injury because of my profession, kind of et cetera, et cetera. And now I know that, even though all those diagnoses showed up on MRIs and different tests, they weren't the reason for any of my pain, but they always gave me a reason as to why I was in pain.
Yeah, and just to highlight
Uh,
that for some people I see they get their testing done and it doesn't show anything, and so they have really good evidence. And in your case, you actually had right evidence, they would say, on these scans. So just to show people or let people know, you still overcame that, in a way that that wasn't the cause, even though that showed that on those reports.
yeah, I definitely know now that none of those things were the cause, and they were a big part of the problem. The fact that, I was diagnosed
Yes.
with those, they always gave me a reason for, and the doctors a reason for why I was in pain. So I had, multiple medical tests over the years, MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays. During the 37 years of my chronic pain, I had 5 different family doctors. I saw orthopedic surgeons, neurologists. I went to physio faithfully, chiropractor, tried acupuncture, athletic therapists, osteopaths, Reiki, naturopaths, like you name it. I tried it all. I was very dedicated client, did every exercise. I have a file of back and neck exercises that I have done over the years.
Yeah,
Tried
37
different
years. I
diets.
want to pick that up too. That's a long time of different things. That 37 years, just to highlight that.
It's a very long time, yes. I tried different diets. I gave up dairy. I gave up gluten. I was on, a host of different prescription medications over the years, on one for nerve pain, anti-inflammatories, muscle relaxants, opioids. Here in Canada, a few years ago, it became legal to get a prescription for medical marijuana. Tried that as well. Many different natural supplements as well. None of the medications really worked overly well, which now I know makes sense. And I'm not a big medication person. So now that I look back at that, I think I'm thankful for that, because I think a lot of people do end up getting addicted to the opioids, etc., because they really don't know where else to turn and what else to try. Definitely my life became very small. I was withdrawing socially, because I was also really doing, I didn't want people to see how miserable I was, my friends, my family. So I was doing a good job of protecting them, but that was also exhausting for myself.
You're kind of hiding
And
it, hiding this to the outside world.
I was hiding it to the outside world. I mean, my husband had a small peek of it, but I was even hiding the worst of it from him as well. Any social gathering or outing was revolved around, how am I going to manage this? Am I going to be able to rest somewhere during it? Am I going to be able to lie out flat somewhere? I mean, Jim, over the years, I have lied out flat on public benches,
Yeah.
on the grass,
So that was
on the
your, at
ground.
the time, that was your go-to thing that you could get
Yeah.
relief, would have to lie down flat.
Yes, yes. We live about 90 minutes from Ottawa, which is where my adult son lives. And it got to the point that even to travel to visit him, my husband would drive. I would get in the back seat, put on my seatbelt, and lie down in the back to make that trip. So I really, now I know I was living in survival mode. Which I didn't really understand that at the time. And things were very, very bleak. I really thought that this was my life forever. That, to get up, to endure the day, to go to bed, and to get up and kind of repeat it over and over. I didn't see that there was, any way out. About 10 years ago, I got into a bit of yoga, kind of hoping that maybe the mind body approach. I was still working at that time, and I was
So you
trying it
continued
to
to
start.
work through, like you said, you were working through, still trying to live your life as normally as possible, even with all the symptoms.
I was still trying. I mean, I had to definitely reduce the number of days I worked and the hours in the day that I could work. Um, Sometimes I was only working half days, etc. But basically, when I would walk in the door from work, I would lie out on the kitchen floor flat. Tended to do the kitchen floor so I could still be part of the family interaction, as my
Okay.
husband was
From the
cooking
kitchen
and
floor. Yeah.
yes, as my
Everybody's
son
looking
came home
down on you
from
at the floor.
school. Yes, because I felt like that was still better than me running off to my bedroom and being alone.
Yeah. How did your family deal with it at the time? What were they thinking of it? How did they cope with it or respond
I
to it?
mean, I think we all just thought this is what it is. I mean, like, they were supportive. My husband was very supportive in the sense that, like, anything I couldn't do, he took right over and did. And I did feel somewhat guilty about that, but also thankful that he was, ready and willing and able to do that. And I mean, my son, that was kind of really all he knew of me, because I had been in chronic pain, since he was a baby. So he didn't really know any different than this mother who, still was going about life and doing what she can. But when she was at home, she was usually, lying out on the floor. That was
Right.
just took some mindfulness programs, and I found that was helpful. To the point that maybe it made me feel about 10% better, kind of gave me a different outlook, knew that there was a mind-body connection, but had no idea, how strong the mind-body connection, but it was a little window of opportunity that there was a connection between mind and body. So about 5 years ago, I had to leave the workforce. It just became, unbearable for me to
So it's just
try
getting worse and
anything.
worse. And all through this time, you hadn't come across any of the real mind body work yet. You were still just coping and with physical measures. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, now I look back and right, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, which is exactly what I was doing. But I didn't know what else to do. And I thought by doing nothing, that was kind of giving up or throwing in the towel. So, I continued to go to physio, massage. Maybe I would get some relief for a few hours, like a few days, sometimes a week or two if they tried a new, a procedure, which now I think was totally placebo effect on my part. Let's try dry needling. Oh, my brain, oh, I've never had that before. Maybe this is going to help, so maybe it did help for a week or two, but nothing ever lasted. I mean, which now totally makes sense as to
Makes
why it
sense.
didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's common. I tell people a lot of treatments, you have hope, right? And you have that initial burst, right? And it's a new treatment. And you see that all the time. People get some success for a little bit, right? But then it just drops off. That's very common.
Yes, yeah, right. You kind of right back to right back to where you were. So I left the workforce in the hopes that not doing that, job that is definitely physically demanding would provide some relief, which it didn't. So I think now looking back, that actually made things worse, because now I wasn't working. I was just at home with nothing more to focus on except my pain, and how, I guess I had always had that little bit of hope. Well, once I get to the end of my working career, things will improve. And they didn't. So I found that the fear of the pain just started to just overwhelm me. I mean, I was so afraid of doing anything, getting in the car to go anywhere, doing any social outing, like going to manage anything other than, doing the very smallest of activities. So one day when I left my physiotherapist's office, which now actually ended up being the very last time I saw her, but I didn't realize at the time that it would be. I just thought I have to find somebody to talk to about the fear. So initially I was just thinking, just a regular therapist about my fear, but I took to the internet and I Googled fear of chronic pain, and some things that I had never heard of kind of started to pop up. This neuroplastic word,
What year was
neuroplasticity.
this? What year was this that was your, when you started to Google that? When was that?
That was the end of February, so last winter. So
Okay.
that's the first time I had ever heard of that concept. In all those years of all the different practitioners, doctors, specialists.
Amazing, isn't it? 37 years of this, and now this was just this past 2023 or 22? 2023?
23, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Like never. So there was this interesting word. I'm like, oh, so click on the next link to it and start reading a little bit about it. I'm like, my gosh, this is really interesting. So then I came across, as I was Googling that, I came across Alan Gordon's book, The Way Out.
Yeah.
Um, ordered it on Amazon. It was at my doorstep in 2 or 3 days, and I just started picking up it and reading it. And within a few chapters, I just knew that this was my way out. I mean, it just all made so much sense to me. It's very well written, but it's also very easy to understand, written in layman's terms, definitely. Um, Even with a little bit of kind of humor,
Yeah.
spread throughout of
Alan's
it.
very witty. He's a witty guy,
Yes,
even in
yes,
person, because I've done some trainings with him, and he's the same as he writes in the book in person.
yes. Because some of his story, I mean, basically, he developed these concepts to help heal himself because he was kind of like me, wasn't finding any relief from, well, a lot of people that work in this area now that I know that, I mean, most of them got into this mind body healing because the regular medical system was not doing anything for them. So I finished reading the book in a few days, and already I felt better because I just knew that this was going to be my way out. It just all fell into place. I'm sure for some people it doesn't come that quickly that they know that the belief,
Yeah.
but
It's almost
um
like you are a ripe apple on a tree. You've been through so much in maturity. You're ready just to fall off. You were just ready, and it hit you right so strongly. Like you said, I
oh,
believed. There wasn't a shadow of a doubt, it sounds like, in your mind at that point.
there wasn't a shadow of a doubt. So I know that's not going to be the case for everybody, but I think just if you can be open to the idea that it could be a possibility for you, you don't have to believe 100% initially. So I finished the book, and I think just from reading the book, I was feeling 30-40%
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
because my fear just plummeted from after I read the
Yes. Yes. The fear, and that kind of showed you right away that the fear was dominant. And it
oh,
shows you right away, if you go 30-40% down, heck, that's your brain, right? I mean, for reading
no,
a book. And I
exactly.
tell some people, like you said, even if it goes down 1%, 2%, 5%, that's your brain. In the same way, I just this past week I had worked with a number of people where their symptoms went up 5, 10, 20% because of information they got from the doctor that was negative. So again, that's your brain too. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean anything's wrong, right? So we have to be very clear on this. What's the cause? What's causing this to go down, 30-40%? Information, belief, really, right? Belief, relaxing. Oh, I'm going to be okay, right? Low fear going down.
Definitely. So I finished the book, and I believe some people could probably get significantly better from reading the book. And there's also a lot of free information out there on YouTube. You have your YouTube channel. So many other mind body therapists do. Instagram. There's a lot of really great information out there. Um, for free. I mean, it is amazing. I had made the small investment into the book, but then I decided, because my chronic sensations had been there for so long, that I was going to, seek professional help for the next steps. So again, I took to the internet. Um, was hoping, I mean, I live an hour and a half from Canada's capital, so my hope was that I would find something, you know in Ottawa. Really, the only real thing I came across in Canada was Pain Psychotherapy Canada out of Calgary, Alberta. Went onto their website, and wow, I was just blown away. They specialize in this neuroplastic pain and treating patients with chronic pain. All their therapists have either had chronic pain themselves and cured themselves using this, or have an intimate relationship, meaning they are married to somebody with chronic pain. They had a parent or a child with chronic pain.
Yeah.
And I thought, again, I just knew this was going to be my answer. So they have a 20-minute free consultation. I called, got my, had to wait a few weeks, obviously, for my first appointment, but in that few weeks, I was okay. I mean, I still had, I still had pain, don't get me wrong, but the fear, I just knew that.
Were you still lying on the floor at that point as much, or did you already stop doing some of that point?
At that point, I probably was still lying on the floor. But after, like, the day I started the therapy, I canceled all upcoming physio chiro appointments. I canceled them all that morning, and my therapy was starting that
Good for
afternoon.
you. I like to highlight that too. I know Dr. Sarno, you're probably familiar with now, he was a proponent of that. And some people always ask me, like, hey, is it okay to do these other things? I get that question all the time. And I say to people, well, there's not one right answer, but I do think in general, if you've been doing those things for so long, you
Right.
want to stop them because they're not helping right at this point. They're like 30 something years of these things. They're not going to start helping you now after they didn't help you. So, and they can become a crutch in people's recovery. I do see that to be the case.
Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I thought, well, that's reinforcing in my brain that there's something physically wrong.
Correct. Something wrong with you.
Right.
Absolutely.
And there was nothing physically wrong with me. So I started my therapy, and within 2 sessions, I mean, on the very first session, they have to do the assessment, of course, and go through the different criteria for neuroplastic pain. And I said to my therapist, I said, I understand, why you have to do this, but I said, I know. I know that I have neuroplastic pain, and I know that I am going to get better. And
Okay, let's stop right there. So important. The first part we talked about already, the belief. I know I have this. Boom, very important, no doubt. And I know I'm going to get better. I really want to highlight that because I hear that too from the people I work with. When people start telling me this, it's going to happen. So how did you know you're going to get better?
I mean, because I researched, so in between that time, kind of where I had to wait for the therapy to start, and I had read Alan's book, I researched a lot of this on my own then. That's, part of me and my hypervigilant personality, which is part of the problem, but,
Also, that helped you though. Keep going all
but
these years.
that's right. So I just read and researched, and it all just made sense. And I knew I could do it. And
Yeah.
I don't really know what it was. And I'm so thankful that just happened for me, because I realize it doesn't happen for everybody. I had no doubt that this
Yeah.
was.
It's really important to highlight these things, no doubt, which is strong belief. And I know I'm going to get better. I think, and I try to teach these things to people. And I think in a way, even if like that came organically to you, that
Yeah.
and I want the listeners to know this, that you can build that up. Like we can eradicate the doubt, right? Through a lot of ways. And we can build up the confidence, like you said, that you're going to get better. Affirmations, things like this. And so
Yes.
even if you don't have it, doesn't mean you can't build that up, right? To where
That's
you,
right. Oh no, definitely. I agree. I feel that I was very fortunate just to have that. Like you said, just organically. But no, I agree what you're saying, because if somebody reads, this book, or there's many books out there, if that's how they want to start, or listens to your YouTube channel, and like you said, even if things start to change 1% for them, 2%, well, that's starting to build the confidence and the knowledge that this is going to help. And even if it's just step by step, little by little,
Yeah.
Once you get enough of those positive corrective experiences, then you're going to feel, as strongly about it as
Yeah.
I
Your
did.
confidence just shoots up, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's it. And the confidence erodes the doubt and the fear.
Yes. Yes. No, definitely. So, off we went into the therapy. So the first thing he used was, the pain reprocessing therapy, which now when I know about it, I mean, it's just so amazing. It's such an amazing modality, and just how the fear can, I mean, there's nothing to be afraid of. So
Yeah.
I was no longer afraid. And all these things that my preconditioned responses, sitting for long periods of time, sitting in uncomfortable furniture, getting in the car, standing for long periods of stationary time, all those things that I used to think brought on the pain. Like I knew that they didn't.
At
Obviously
that
the
point,
first
you were just for the audience with pain reprocessing therapy. You were introduced to it, and the book obviously as well. How often did you use it, or did you? How did you use that in your recovery?
Well, I mean, yeah, I used it within my mind all the time. I mean, somatic
Yeah, so you kind of
tracking,
incorporated it into your day, like
I did. I
situations. Yeah, okay, that's
incorporated,
all I wanted to know. Yeah, it wasn't like you sat
yeah.
down, dedicated time, or maybe you did as well, but you used it throughout the day.
Yes, so you're right. I did it both ways. I did it more formally,
Yeah,
some formal somatic trackings. Once I became more familiar with the somatic trackings, well, then you can implement it very informally throughout your day as well.
yeah,
Um, and I also started to engage in life, which is, you had brought that up, a few minutes ago. So things that I wouldn't have done a month before, I knew that it was safe to do them. So I started gradually. I mean, no, I didn't get in the car and go on a 10-hour road trip. Um, because
great
that would have,
exposure. So you did a great exposure, and then how did you? Yeah, like how far would you go, just so people can hear what you did for yourself with the exposure.
right. So, let's use example, because I had told myself I wanted to, this was springtime. I wanted to be able to get on a bicycle again. I hadn't been on a bicycle in so long. Um, so I was going to go like 4 blocks, 4 blocks on the bicycle. And the next time I went 6 blocks.
So you
And I had some,
systematically, and this is important because I know some other success stories say this, and I get a lot of clients who have a hard time with this. Like you were practicing what we term outcome independence, it sounds like, right? Did you have
right.
symptoms going up during that time when you challenged it further at the
I
time?
did. I did.
Yes.
Yes, I
Important to
did.
understand
And
that. People to know
yeah,
that.
I had symptoms, and I was like, oh yeah, there you are, symptom. I know what you are now, so I'm not afraid of you. I'm not
Yes.
afraid of
Really
you.
important. I think because a lot of people think, oh, okay, I'm going to go back and I won't have any symptoms. And I'm always like, it's probably not going to be like that. But what you did is exactly right. You reinterpreted them or you responded to them in a way of like, you reduced all the fear. Hey, it's fine. I'm not worried about
Yeah,
this.
no, no. And I'd say, like, brain, like, I'm safe. So, so I would say it in my head. Sometimes I would even say it out loud.
So
I
self-talk. So
would
you
lean
use the
in.
self-talk and
I use the self-talk a lot.
yeah,
And I'd
important.
lean into pleasant sensations while I was doing that. If I was biking and my knee was bothering me, because that was one of my more minor symptoms. Um, yeah, I would just have this visualization in my mind. It was kind of something that made me smile and laugh. And over and over. I mean, I can bike, I can bike 30 kilometers now, Jim. But and
Awesome.
sometimes my knee would still come back, and I'd be like, huh, there you are again. I've had the few bike rides where it's come back 20 times. I've had other bike rides where it's come back zero.
Yeah, but the key here again, the key what I want to highlight again is it sounds like you've been consistent. Like it's not like you're listening to the symptom anymore, right? 20 times you just kept going, right? You didn't stop, right?
No, No, I
That's the
didn't stop
key.
because stopping would tell your brain that it's dangerous.
Correct.
There's nothing.
That's exactly
There's
right. That's the avoidance and the fear avoidance, they call it. So, yeah. So
yeah,
I really want to highlight that people, when they're recovering, because people are obviously scared of the symptoms. So the first thing is you realized and believed that this was TMS. It was nothing. It was neuroplastic pain. Then you developed the confidence. You knew you were going to recover. Then you started to put it into action. You had to do the work, which was challenging, right? To get back to these things.
yes. I mean,
And you did it.
it's it's not easy, but it's simple once it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's really what I found. So yeah, the pain reprocessing therapy and the somatic tracking for me were like gold. I mean, they just clicked with me so much. And you're right, I incorporated them into my life all the time, over and over in my informal life as I went about my day. Um, we also ended up definitely after I started to feel better, so maybe 4 or 5 sessions in, we did emotional therapy and awareness, emotional expression and awareness
Awareness.
therapy.
Yeah.
Thank you. um, and that with my therapist was always an option. It was never something that you had to do. But from all my research on my own, I mean, I have definitely a history of childhood trauma. And I believed that working through that process as well was best for my long-term recovery.
Yeah.
So that was also very interesting, I found, because it really wasn't talk therapy, which is what I always kind of imagined maybe trauma therapy was. It was very somatic as well.
Yeah.
Um, and learning how to feel all those repressed emotions that I really never knew how to feel. I would avoid stuff down emotions my entire life, which also, kept me in this condition longer and longer.
Yes.
But I really didn't know that any of this was all part of the problem. So,
So talk us through that a little bit for people, because I agree the emotional piece is really important and valuable. And I feel like I could say from my experience, it's like the last piece that people want to look at or address
right.
because it is can be quite, we're not comfortable with emotions or we had traumatic things happen to us. So it's difficult to go after. But I think it is really important, like you mentioned, for long-term success.
Yeah.
So talk us through what you did with that.
Yes. So again, I feel like, you know, I mean, maybe after 37 years, I deserved some good luck and karma, but my therapist was so excellent that really like working through this, he made it as seamless as I'm sure it could possibly be. And even though we were working through some traumatic stuff, I mean, sometimes at the end of the session, like we would be laughing, joking. I was looking forward to all my appointments.
Mm. You were that's the key thing too, that you were, like you said, you made the choice that this is important to me, that I do that. And I always tell people, like, when you can go in with that right attitude about these memories and about things that have happened to us, it's not all that, just like the symptoms, it's not all that scary and bad. It's good for us to do this.
Yes, it's good for us. And I think on a cognitive level, for many, many years, I always knew that I probably should have had therapy for, all these past events, but I never had because I was avoiding all that because that was,
Yeah.
part of my whole lifestyle. And I mean, now when I feel emotion, like I never really knew what it felt like to feel an emotion before, to be quite honest.
Mm.
So now you accept the emotion and you sit with it and you feel it and you realize how it feels in your body and you process it, and it's kind of, it works its way out of your body and you're done with it. It doesn't get stuffed down there and to, fester
Yeah.
and
Or
stay there.
or contribute to the somatic symptom in your body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And when my chronic pain symptoms started to dissipate, so this might be important for people to hear too. anxiety overwhelmed me. So now I feel like that anxiety was always there. It was just hidden behind the physical symptoms.
Yeah. Or, and you're right. And we can spin it in a different way or understand it that the anxiety, we call it a symptom imperative, may have been representing somatically through these types of symptoms through the fear. And then as
Right.
you got a handle on your brain, got a handle on the symptoms, it went to straight anxiety now.
Yes. Yes, it did. But because I was so far along, I guess, in my therapy at that point, I mean, I recognized, or we recognized with my right away what it was. I wasn't afraid of the anxiety from day
Awesome.
one. I was like, oh, this is what it is. And I accepted it. I didn't try and fight it. I didn't try and ignore it. I accepted it. And, I would literally go into this chair in my living room and sit with the anxiety. What does this feel like? And if I was out and about in my day, same thing though. I wouldn't still try and ignore it. I would acknowledge that it was there
Yeah.
and that,
Yeah. It sounds like you did exactly what you needed to, what you wanted to do, which was invite it in, sit with it, not react to it, not push it away, not like you said, fight it, push it down. You welcomed it. You said it's okay, it's just anxiety. And you
Mhm.
and the other thing I'll say, it sounds like you were in your we call it in your prefrontal cortex, you were consciously handling it right in a good way. You weren't just freaking out and
Mm.
going along with it.
Yes, because I knew what it was again, and I know that it's nothing to be afraid of anymore.
Correct.
I mean, I had experienced some anxiety in the past, and now when I look back and see, like, I know that I was exhibiting high functioning anxiety my whole adult life, but I never really recognized that, and I thought people with anxiety went around anxious about every little single thing. So I never recognized it in myself until, not that long ago, actually.
Yeah. And like you said, you mentioned that upbringing you had. And so that would have been a breeding ground for this
Of
anxiety.
course. Like
Yeah.
now I look back and I think, well, how could I have not? How could I not have been, full of anxiety?
Right.
And
Right.
and growing up full of anxiety and then at age 20 being in the car accident and the fear and the pain coming on, now I look back and I think, well, I was a prime candidate for chronic symptoms. I mean, I
Yeah,
was.
yeah. You were at risk, right? This would say where you're predisposed potentially at risk, and this is the case for a lot of people with diverse childhood events. Something happens like that, the car accident, and boom, sets this thing off.
Yeah, exactly. Like now I look back and I think, well, it was just all setting up the perfect storm,
Perfect
really.
storm, yeah. So okay, so you sat with the anxiety, you weren't afraid of it, you recognized it, you let it move through your system, and then it started to diminish over time.
Yeah, over a few weeks. So I'd say initially I was having it every day. I wouldn't wake up with it, but within a few hours it would come on. Stay for most of the morning, but tend to peter out as the day went on. But the next day when it happened again, I would just kind of do the same thing. Oh, there you are again. Hi, you
Yeah,
decided to show up again today. That's fine. Welcome you in, and
yeah. Invite it in. That's the oppositional approach. We don't think we should do that, but yeah. And then you just carried on through your days like as normally as you could.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. I didn't let it stop me from doing anything, but I acknowledged that it was there and it was coming along with me for part of my day.
Yeah.
And that was fine.
Yeah, that was
Um,
fine. That's key. The way you perceived it was fine. And which is again, it's not threatening, right? It's not dangerous. It doesn't feel comfortable, just like the pain and symptoms.
right. Right. That's exactly it. It's not comfortable. Would I have preferred it not be there? Well,
Yeah,
of
of
course.
course.
Of course. But it was fine that it was there. Uh, Another big thing for me is I had lived my whole life in my mind. And so I had to learn to start living in my body more. And I mean, in yoga and mindfulness and that, we do practice that somewhat, but I still didn't totally get it way back then, I don't think. But there was a few times early on in my recovery when I was able to drop. So when I was having symptoms and I was able to kind of get out of my mind and drop into my body, and with the snap of a finger, a moderate symptom totally disappeared. And then I was like,
Hmm. So
you know,
you
it might
say
have
drop.
seemed,
So tell the audience when you say drop into your body, what does that mean to you?
and it is a hard concept to even explain. And it took me a while to, and I still can't always do it, to be perfectly honest. Like, it doesn't come easily to me. And I think most people live a lot of their life in their mind. And then society has certainly not helped that with all the technology and all the focus on busyness, etc. But you know, sometimes I would try and just concentrate. Then if there were negative sensations going on in my body, try and pick something that's neutral or even pleasant. For me, neutral was often my feet, and maybe because it was the lowest part in my body as well. But
Mm.
literally try and get out of the head. So don't feel anything from the neck up, but just concentrate on feeling kind of from the shoulders down.
So you
And
bring your attention or your awareness into your
yes,
body to certain areas of your body. Is that what you're saying?
yes, yes.
And keep it there for how long did you do that? Just for
That's,
what amount of time?
well, I mean, initially I couldn't do it for very, you know, for very long. So as short a time as I was able to do it, but I would keep practicing it and keep
Yeah.
practicing it. And, you know,
So
there
you're
was,
getting your, yeah, you're in a way, you're taking it away from the symptom or away from your head down
yes,
and teaching. I mean, we would say that's getting out of hypervigilance or that too much
right.
attention on the body
Yeah.
parts that hurt, right?
Yes. Yes. The hypervigilance. Yeah. Which I've also, yeah, lived my whole life in hypervigilance. But once you kind of can, yeah, because I mean, the symptom is in your head, it's in your
Yeah.
brain, right? It's not in your body. So if you can get into your body more, then the symptom is going to lower. Or in my case, and I think the first time that really happened was only about 3 weeks after I had started my therapy. And the symptom was definitely moderate, maybe even higher than moderate. And I had went to ventured out to a sporting event that I really wanted to see, but probably if I hadn't started my therapy yet, I wouldn't have done it, because how am I going to sit in those seats for so long, et cetera, et cetera. So I was there, and there was a very moderate sensation in the back of my neck. And I said to myself, I said, oh, you know, there you are. Of course you came to this sporting event. Why wouldn't you want to see it as well? But I said, but why don't you go sit in the section over there? And when I did that, it totally disappeared. Not, you know, 10 minutes later, it came back, but it totally disappeared. And I was like, this is amazing.
So
Like,
talk it through again so people can understand what you did.
yeah,
Because it was real, right? Something really happened there that was, you were like, oh my God, right? It was a profound shift.
yes. Well, yeah, it was. Well, so I guess I acknowledged that the symptom was there, but not in a fearful way. I mean, just
Hmm.
kind of giving it being a little curious or even light with it, saying, well, of course you'd come here. You know, like, well, I want to see this exciting sporting event. Why wouldn't you want to see it as well? But you know, I'm kind of almost joking with the symptom, right? I'm not afraid of it.
Right.
Really, I'm joking with it. And then I was kind of like, you know, but why don't you go sit over there? Because I don't want you to sit here with me. If
Yeah.
you
Okay.
do,
I'm going to highlight this again. This is another important piece because I teach this as well. Is
okay,
you, in a way, we talk, this is called cortical control in the terms of neuroplastic terms. We have this ability which you utilize to take control. Like, why don't you go sit over there? Like to literally put it over there.
right?
You did put it
I
over
did.
there. And
I
that
did.
shows you we have some mind control. We do once you experience that like you did, it's like, wow, we are powerful. And in a way, you refuted the symptom, like because I think it's important to highlight acceptance is a big piece to healing, like you alluded to. But
Right.
also this idea that look, we don't need, hey, why don't you go over there? We don't really want you here.
Right.
The ability to say, I don't deserve this or I don't need this right now. I mean, it's fine, but why don't you go over there? And that you could
Yes.
actually move the symptom over there. I think that's
Right.
really, really powerful to see,
It
right?
It was, and like now looking back, that was like a major turning point for me because it was very early in the recovery. And like you said, I realized like how much control I could have over the symptom. And like I said, it came back, it moved seats and came back to my section.
Correct.
um,
Yeah, but just doing that showed you that something had changed. When I first started out with me too, and I would like I would say I would kind of like talked it down, or I said, you know, you're whatever, you're not. It would go away for 30 seconds only, and then come back again and revisit
right,
like. But the
right.
fact that it shifted, something really happened there.
Oh my goodness, yes, like huge. And like I said, when I look back, it's one of my main points that even though I already believed, but I
Yeah.
I didn't understand the power of the brain and the power
Yes.
of the mind. Like it is incredible. The more and more I learn about this, it's so fascinating. Um, you
It's
know,
it's
it's
truly fascinating. And I think I'm glad you brought this piece up because you highlighted a lot of great pieces like the power we have positively or negatively to affect
right.
our health.
Well, yes, yes. Because I mean, for all those years, the power of my brain was affecting it so negatively, but I didn't know any different. Um, I really didn't. And just like most people watching this, whether they're on their journey or haven't started their journey yet, what we did in the past, none of it was our fault because we didn't know any different. But
Yeah.
now that I know that's why I'm here, I feel, Jim, like I'm walking around with this big secret.
Yeah. I
That
know.
it took me a long time to discover. Um, and unfortunately, there's still a lot of the medical profession and the body practitioners that don't want us to get this secret out. But
Yeah, I think it's an unconscious thing. I think they just don't know. I think a lot of people, like I always say, they say, oh, my doctor didn't do this or they didn't know about. I said, they just don't know. We're not trained. I know as a physical therapist, I was not trained in this at all. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not in the way that we're talking about it at all.
right, right. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like now that I know this big secret, I have to help spread the word because I would prefer other people, don't have to suffer nearly as long as I did. Um, so, yeah, those are the main modalities that I used. And I've had setbacks. I've had symptoms recur. I had, but once the summer got here, um, I just started engaging in so many things that I thought I could, like I haven't kayaked in years and years, hopped back in a kayak. Again, the graded exposure though, like only
Mhm.
small, short. The very first time we did, I said to my husband, I know this is going to be a lot of work. Bring the kayaks down, get on the life jackets. I said, I'm going as far as that dock and back, you
Yeah,
know. Like
that's fine though. But you are committed, right? You've made the decision and the choice. I can do it. I'll
right.
do this amount, right? To
Yes.
start with, and then you'll go and do a little more. So you had a good plan of action. Sounds like.
Right. Yeah. The next day I'll do more. Next day I'll do more. Um, So yeah, in the summer, I mean, it was the best summer of my life because, I was kayaking, hiking, I started to play pickleball, and I was just engaging in so many things, but it wasn't just that the physical symptoms were gone. It was just the joy had returned to life. And I don't even know if I want to use the word returned, actually. I'm not sure
Hmm.
that I ever felt this way before because I've lived really my whole life in survival mode. I mean, now I know that.
From your childhood, yeah, that's all you knew.
Yes.
That's all you knew.
That's all I knew. And because then the car accident happened so early and the fear started with that, I really have never known a different type of life.
Hmm.
And now I walk around thinking like, oh my gosh, I mean, life is so full of joy and connection to people. I mean, I want to connect all those people that I made myself connect with in the past because I still knew it was best for me to do, but I was forcing myself
Yeah.
to. Now, I mean, I just feel that connection and joy and that you know the world is such an awesome place and I I
So
mean, I hope this
amazing.
feeling lasts forever. It's so amazing when you get to this point.
Yeah.
Um,
And to
that
think about it, it's only shifting in your head, in your mind. You're doing the same things, like you're still, like you said, seeing people, but from a whole new perspective now.
Yeah, from a whole new perspective. I mean, before I was so guarded and I had up, I was hiding behind a mask, trying to pretend that my life was fine and I was coping all right. And now I don't have to pretend anymore because that's the real thing. It's the real deal now.
Yeah.
And you know, I understand all those people who are in chronic symptoms right now, and I understand their fear and the fear of the symptom, the fear of trying something new, trying this mind body approach, the fear of getting into, all the messy suppressed emotions maybe, but on the other side of all that mountain of fear, I mean, it's something you can't even imagine when you're in the symptoms, but it's just so amazing and it's so worth, climbing that mountain. It's
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you just highlighted the idea that the fear or the anxiety, if you can get through that, you get through a lot of this stuff, right? Because we're afraid of so many things. The mind is so afraid of things, symptoms and emotions and what
yeah.
happened to us. But it's really nothing to be afraid of, right?
No, it's nothing to be afraid of because there's nothing permanently wrong. Yeah. Which is what, so many of us thought for so many years. I thought that as well. I thought this was my life sentence.
Yeah.
And I was so wrong. I was so wrong.
Yeah, it's
And
like
I
you were
mean,
put in a jail, and then it was a self-imposed jail, and somehow you figured out, you found the key to get out.
right, right. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I don't have any, special training. I mean, I was a dental hygienist. I'm just a regular layperson. So if I could find that key,
Yeah.
everybody can find the key. It's
Yeah, and I think that's it. And sometimes, like you said, what you said was important, that it's not a one, you had a big jump forward when you had read the book, but you also had to work through things over time. And like you had the key, but it's like you had to keep using it. Like you got put back in jail many times and you
yes,
kept having to open the
yes.
door to get out, right?
Mhm. No, I mean the symptoms come back. Uh, they will. I had in the middle of the summer, maybe I say a week or so when I had a relapse, which, every day. And it wasn't just the chronic pain symptoms, it was some of those other symptoms that I alluded to that,
Yeah.
um, I had a 10 or more symptoms now that I know are mind body. And then occasionally I still get a symptom popping up here and there. And just this past week, I got a little bit of kind of unfavorable, maybe health news about a different condition. And, the first day I was fine, but then the second day a little symptom was there.
Mhm.
This started on Monday, and by Thursday, I had some symptoms. But first of all, I wasn't surprised that they were
Yeah.
there. I mean, because we know that stress and emotions is what's going to bring the symptoms on. I was accepting that they were there, and Friday morning I woke up and they're gone. They were gone.
There you go. You're handling it really well. I mean, you're handling it so well. And I think that's the key, is because it's life. We do have
Like,
stress.
right.
And when we have a history of somaticizing stress, which is what your body does, and me too, and everybody else with TMS, it's just this idea that, yeah, we could get it, but you know what it is.
That's
You
right.
weren't freaking out about it anymore. And that's the key. You handle it really, really nicely.
No, and like you said, I believe that this for people with TMS, this is going to happen for the rest of our life,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's
I
fine.
think so too. People always ask me, Jim, I don't want these symptoms. I want these emotions. I go, well, you can't choose that. I mean, the brain has probably been doing that your whole life. So it
Yes,
doesn't really matter as long as you know what it is.
exactly. And you have the toolbox to the symptom's not going to escalate now like it did all those years ago.
Right.
So it's fine if the symptoms come. And like you said, I agree. Like we have life. There's going to be things that happen in life that we're not going to like very much, and the symptoms are going to come.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
I think that's so important because I know a lot of people, they just are so strongly thinking, I don't want any symptoms. I want to be perfect. Right. I want to be perfect.
right.
Good luck.
That's part of the
Good luck. I
problem.
get symptoms too. I know Dr. Schubiner pretty well. He gets symptoms. And we teach this stuff, right? And you've been through it. You get so it's like it's a human condition. Nicole Sachs is the same thing. But it's
Yes.
how you handle them, and that's the difference now, right? You said your perspective has completely shifted.
Oh, I mean, I don't I don't mind at all that I get symptoms. Look where I am now compared to I was 9 months ago. I mean, my gosh. Like these symptoms can pop up now and then and come and go. That's that's such a big win. I mean,
Yeah.
I went from a life of misery to a life of thriving and joy. I mean, I
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. You can see it on your face. I mean, how happy you are. I mean, to go from 37 years of suffering and trying, I mean, that's what was so profound and trying every single thing in the book and then stumbling upon this and seeing you get your life back. It's so amazing, right? And powerful. And yeah, like you said, it's
yes.
just like a big secret that really, and it is. That's the thing. You took 37 years to find it. I mean, it's not.
Yes. Yes, no, exactly. So how I feel now is really I have a lot of missed time to make up for, so I'm just enjoying every day. And, we have plans to be traveling again. And I mean, honestly, every day, like my calendar is full. I'm playing pickleball, I'm going biking, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And my husband jokes that, well, he's still working, but like I'm never at home. I'm never at home
Yeah.
because
You're definitely not lying on the floor anymore.
that's right. No, and the funny thing about that, Jim, is as I scrubbed my kitchen floor the other day, there's a worn mark and an area of my kitchen floor because I always lied in the same area.
Wow.
And I'm like, that'll always kind of be my reminder because, as a person with mind body syndrome, we still have to keep on top of that a little bit, like do for everybody to be different, but like for me to keep on top of meditations, making sure I'm keeping my nervous system regulated. And I think that's kind of my lifelong reminder that like
Yeah,
I'm
self-care.
better, but I still have to keep on top of this.
Yeah, that's a great reminder because it's self-care. Just like you don't brush your
Yes.
teeth once and think you're done,
Right.
or exercise or eat. You have to
Yes.
keep up with this. We all have our patterns that are in us.
Yes.
And one of another mind body doctor, Dr. Hanscom, he says, the neural pathways quiet down, but they don't become extinct. That they can
Right.
end up at any time. So
Yes.
right. So we got to stay on top of it, like you said.
Yes. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, great stuff. Do you love this story today? Great story. Do you have any parting words for people who are struggling or working through this process?
I mean, I'm living proof that it works and that it doesn't matter how long you've been struggling with these symptoms. I mean, like you said, the neural pathways, they can change and they can change quite quickly.
Yes.
And um, it's such an amazing process. I mean, you have to jump in there and give it a try. You have to believe somewhat that it could help you. But I mean, if you've tried everything else, what have you got to lose? My
Yeah,
goodness.
that's it. And typically, like the thing is, like you said, people do not get to this. This isn't the first thing they do. This is the
No,
last thing they
it's the
do.
last. Yes.
Right. So, and I actually think that's kind of helpful because they've done everything else, and
Right.
so they're ready. It's like,
Yes.
you know, for it.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, what do you have to lose? And you just have to stick with the process. I think
Yes. Yes, you have to stick with the process, and not everybody gets results as quickly as I did. I want to make that clear, so if somebody's not getting results in a month or two, that doesn't mean that it's not going to work. Some people it takes longer, and that's fine. If it takes you a year, if it takes you 2 years, but where will you be in 2 years if you don't try it?
Yeah, that's it. I want to highlight that. It took me 3 years to figure out and get out of my chronic hip pain. And I always tell people it's like a maze, and you have to just keep working the processes, and it's ups and downs. And sometimes you get this big aha moments and shifts. And sometimes, like you said, your symptoms return, but you just continue with the process of rewiring the brain, and you'll get there. Like you're living proof of that, like you said.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's going to be help a lot of people. I really appreciate you sharing this, and keep spreading the word to the other people in your community.
Yes, I'm doing my best, Jim, and thank you for having me here today.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Take care of yourself. We'll
Okay,
see you next time. Okay.